going to say that again. The closing of the Phantom of the Opera, the loss of my son, and the future of Broadway. April 17th, 2023, written by Andrew Lloyd Webber. An apple a day, if well aimed, keeps the doctor away. An apple a day, if well aimed, keeps the doctor away. I was speaking in P.G. Wodenhouse quotes with my eldest son, Nick, who was in hospice, where he was being treated for cancer just days ago. Here's one for you, said Nick, laughing. He had summarized that after bulletins from New York, his father, as Wodehouse might have put it, was less than gruntled. Has anybody ever seen a dramatic critic in the daytime? Of course not. They come out after dark, up to no good. We hugged and said our goodbyes. The next day, my son died. Nothing's worse for a parent than the death of a child. Fathers are not supposed to bury their sons. In my bones, I feel it wrong to write about the closing of the Phantom or where Broadway is going right now. But I'll try. I owe everything to my love of Broadway and its glorious legacy of musicals. So everything I write comes from my childhood dream that I'd make it to the great white way. All roads lead to my late friend and collaborator, Hal Prince. My association with Hal goes back to 1970, when he sent me a telegram proposing that he directed and produced Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway. It got me only after the show was already committed. Hal knew of my regret, and we kept in touch. Cut to 1975. Hal had just triumphantly opened A Little Night Music when By Jeeves, the Wodehouse musical for which I wrote the music, bombed in London. Hal wrote to me when I was at my lowest. The letter contained his mantra. He said he liked my score, but you can't listen to music if you can't look at it. The sets for By Jeeves were as hideous as the ones for Night Music were gorgeous. Later, he gave me an hour in the Savoy Hotel bar. His parting line, never be afraid of composing good and brave new work. Andrew, never be afraid of failure. That's what Hal Prince said to me. In 1978, Hal directed Evita, which then went to New York and, despite horrendous reviews, became Tim Rice and my first proper Broadway hit. That is 1978. Afterward, Hal and I met regularly. Even if our shows were very different, our agenda was the same: our love of theater and Broadway. Hal saw Cats in previews in London, and I still have his notes. Cut to 1985. We met at a cocktail party for Tony nominees at the Plaza Hotel. The staff was on strike. There was no chance of the show. Hal was nominated for remotely winning, and we ankled elsewhere. The conversation, as I remember it, flowed much as follows. Hal, this is me talking. I said, Hal, would you ever direct a high romance? And then Hal responds to me, kid, are you thinking about one? Of course, then I said, yes. Ever since I saw South Pacific, Jesus, Cats, Argentine's director's wife, haven't hit the spot. Hal responded, nor have mine. Go on. I explained, I just read a book. He said, what was that book? That book was called The Phantom of the Opera. How had I thought, buried in a novel that couldn't decide if it was a detective or a horror story? Nobody knew. There was the perfect subject, and I said I wanted the theater to resemble a disguised opera house whose chandelier would rise from the stage as the building returned to its former glory. Hal said, "Go write the music." Cut to this past weekend. This past weekend, the 35-year Broadway run of Phantom of the Opera has come to an end. The personal loss to see the close of this wonderful creation. The last Hal Prince production on Broadway with almost 30-piece orchestra and one of the grandest designs that has ever been made or seen in the theater. The irony is that this past season was its best ever. Perhaps it will rise again. Is this the end of a Broadway era? I'm going to ask you the question again. Is this the end of a Broadway era? No. For openers, the era of the big original Broadway musical ended a long time ago. Massive hits such as Hamilton and Phantom did not originate on Broadway, unlike West Side Story and Fiddler on the Roof. Who is taking a risk? As Hal did so wonderfully with Stephen Sondheim. That's the question. Am I wrong in fearing that a great work like Pacific Overtures could not debut on Broadway today unless there was a stage-struck sugar daddy lurking in the wings? It can cost today $5 million. I'm going to say that again. It can cost today $5 million. $5 million with an M to produce a play in a small Broadway house. Now, there are a few plays that can even recoup this, even if ticket prices are astronomical. Even a medium-scale musical today can cost $18 million to present. The weekly running cost of Phantom pre-pandemic was about $850,000. The weekly running cost, $850,000 a week. The additional requirements of the pandemic era pushed it to almost over $1 million. And that's with minimal royalties going to its creators. No wonder musicals now feature small cast, minimal sets. No wonder producers turn to jukebox musicals with song catalogs that everyone knows. No wonder young creators turn to writing for anywhere other than Broadway to make a living. I truly don't know the answer to the ever-daunting challenges of producing Broadway musicals, but I do know that all of us who believe in Broadway must knock our heads together if we care about the kind of future that it will have. Shows like The Lion King, Hamilton, Phantom are the exception. They're not the rule. First ticket cost, the average is now around $130. Ticket cost, $130, unaffordable for too many people. Add to that the significant markups for the digital sale platforms which theater owners enter into contractual arrangements. The theater-going experience must be improved. You cannot, in 2023, have audiences in desperation searching for restrooms during the intermission in a bar across the street in the pouring rain. The theater unions must also help. It's hugely in their members' interest to ensure a heavy, vibrant Broadway. The way multiple union contracts drive up the cost of Broadway shows is unsustainable. But there is sadly an all too likely scenario. Broadway, unlike London's West End, is a worldwide brand name, inextricably linked to New York. So if you want to establish a brand, having a show on Broadway is like renting an expensive Lost Lender storefront on Fifth Avenue or London's Oxford Street. Okay, your brand will lose money, but it has to be there to ensure a successful worldwide rollout. Please, no. This has been a season of goodbyes, personal and public. With the curtain now fallen in New York on the musical that has been the biggest of my career, I passionately pray that Broadway rediscovers the appetite for new scores and original work that made me so excited when I was, as Hal said, and he called me just a kid. The closing of the Phantom of the Opera last weekend, and the loss of my son and the future of Broadway. April 17th, 2023, in the New York Times, written by none other than Andrew Lloyd Webber. Download the Live 365 app. Search WDCE 90.1 FM. Follow me at Sam Newsman on Instagram, at Sam Newsman on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere on social media. Once again, download the Live 365 app as we celebrate one of the best musicals in the history of Broadway, as it's closed last weekend here on the only radio show dedicated to the magic and nostalgia of Saturday morning, hosted by me, a real puppet. From the most trusted puppet in media, reporting since Roswell, I'm Sam Newsman, and this is Saturday morning.